I see there was a question in the chat at the beginning, so about the recording of the webinar. So you can follow the webinar on YouTube now at the moment, but the recording will be available tomorrow, so Friday the 8th, on our Open Science and Doctoral School pages. Whether you need to submit the plan in the first or in the second year of the studies. So I think this has been answered. So so the first time you submit, so if you are enrolled in 21, 22, so the first time you submit is with your dissertation proposal. So presumably in your second year, right?
This is to be in the second year. So the requirement
not in the first year.
The requirement to enroll in the third year of the doctoral study is to get this proposal accepted. So this happens usually in the second year of the
so not in the first year. I think that was the question, first or the second. Then there were some very interesting questions. Okay, regarding intellectual property and revealing the data. So what if I'm doing the research for my PhD in the company and I'm not allowed to share all the data? I think you've answered that. Then
partially. But the next session will
the next session will say more about this. I mean, you're not like, we don't force you to reveal the data. That's the short answer to your question in this form. Then there's a very interesting question about stealing the data, the thieves. So who will control the theft of data, and how can we prevent the reuse of data by thieves who would pass it off as their own? I fear that open access to all data will make it even easier for thieves. Maybe Dr. Beziak, can you say something about this?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Who will handle your data after you publish it? It's in the domain of the data archive. So when we get the data, when we archive the data and publish it, and then we of course provide also access to this data, and it's up to us who will, no, it's not up to us who will access this data, but it's about the agreement between the researcher and the data repository under which conditions this data is accessible. For example, in our archive, we offer several regimes of access. First is open access. That means that data is completely open and whoever passes by can access the data and download it. Then we have a standard access. This means that and majority of our data is accessible under this regime. So users need to register to be able to access the data. In the registration form, they need to provide quite a lot of information about who they are and for what purposes they will use this data. And they need to agree with the conditions of use. For example, whoever reuses the data published with ADP needs to cite the data. That means that it's like with an article. If you publish it to be to enable other colleagues to read it and to reuse it or to use it. And it's the same with the data. You publish it so the others can see it, others can reuse it, and of course they are. It's mandatory for them to cite you. So the question of thieves, I don't know how to answer it, actually. I hope this was clear enough.
The archives take care of, well, at least part of this, but of course we can't prevent all possible scenarios, right?
Yeah, it's like with the articles.
Yeah,
when you
it's like
publish it, yeah.
Or the book or anything, right? So it's always possible to pass other people's work as your own and so on, right?
But otherwise, when the data is published, and this is why it's recommended to publish your data. When it's published, then the users get enough information, bibliographical information, to be able to cite you. Because if you, for example, pass your data through email or I don't know, wherever, through whatever other channel, you have no bibliographical information or no guarantee that others will actually cite you. And yeah, so publishing with data repositories means that your data are visible, discoverable, and they're published research results.
Okay, now we have a couple of other questions. And in medicine, we're dealing with very sensitive data. Is it sufficient to store these data in hospital repositories? So, I mean, sensitive data doesn't need to be open, as far as I understand. So perhaps, Dr. Kotar, can you say maybe a few words? If this is enough, I wouldn't know.
Yes, thank you. Definitely, there are types of data which cannot be or may not be open. These are personal data, and they can either be anonymized, pseudo-anonymized, or have sort of limited access. But it's very important what the informed consent by the persons being part of the investigation allowed.
Yeah, so this is something that Dr. Beziak was also talking about. So that you need to plan in advance which type of consent you want to have, you know, when interviewing and so on, right? Now, another interesting question: what would be the best way to organize data that includes several different type of data? So video, time series, experiment parameters, and so on. This is something that we plan to discuss in our future webinars, but perhaps like a short question, Dr. Kotar or Dr. Beziak. Short answer to this question.
There are some platforms that a research group or even individual researcher can use to organize or forms of research results. So research results can be files of different format, data files, then video, whatever. Any samples. Yeah, there are platforms that enable you to handle all this multitude of different types of research results, like even software. And then you might even need code or anything to process everything. So yeah, we'll discuss this at future events.
Let's continue. So Mario Đurić had two questions. So the first one, I read it earlier, was about this confidentiality between the company and the customer. I think this was answered in this talk. So as far as your PhD plan is concerned, you need to state where the data is and state why it's not available and give the metadata. Am I right here? So you need to provide some information about where the data is and the reasons for why you cannot provide it.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But then there was a continuation later on. You were talking about referring to the contract, like the agreement, and then Mario says, what if this kind of contract does not exist?
That would not be good, because if there is no such contract, I remember from previous years when the obligation came into the statutes of the University of Ljubljana that all final works of studies, including PhD theses, have to be publicly available in the repository of the University of Ljubljana. And of course, some faculties collaborate a lot with industry, with companies. And some of them exactly had what Mario has remarked here, but we do not have contracts. And our only advice was, please do sign contracts, because the contract is not only about openly available or not available data, it's much more. It's about property, it's about the ownership of data, any other thing that doesn't come to my mind at all. So I guess that I could refer you to the general email address of the Rectorate of the University of Ljubljana. If you don't know where to start, I will put the email in the chat. Send us a message and we will refer you either to your faculty specialists or to some other faculties that do this continuously.
Okay, thank you. Then there's a question by Matej Toms. It is common practice in my field of research to publish the entire data that was used to produce a paper in a data repository managed by the publishing company. Is this a sufficient way to ensure that this data follows the FAIR principles? So Dr. Kotar, maybe Dr. Bezjak, can you say something here?
I'm not really a specialist, Sonia is much better on this, but FAIR data means that your data will be stored in a repository that will enable fairness, findability, accessibility, reusability, and interoperability. Some of these letters F, I, A, and R refer to the repository, some of them to the set of research data, but this is not something that you would just happen. You have to have conditions. Sonia, please do say something.
So yeah, I would add to what you already said, Mojca, that it's good. First of all, I was stressing this in my presentation. It's very good to think first, if you have a high quality data, go to the domain specific repositories, because they are professionalists, they're experts to deal with the field data. So if you have social science, come to us. And then and for the journals is usually okay if you publish with domain specific repositories. Domain specific repository provides you the enough metadata so that the data is understandable. You get the digital object identifier which is needed, and also why it's good to go to the domain specific, because it's like with the journals. If you want to publish the data with your article with the high impact journal, that means that they will be somehow readers will find it, because they will go there to find the best that is in the field. And it is the same with the data. If you want to that your data is findable, go to your field specific repository, because other users will go when they will try to find the data, they will find it in the domain specific repositories. So this would be my advice. But otherwise it's okay if you get a DOI and if your data is accessible, findable, etc.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a question by Gašpar Ugrin. Zanima me, ali lahko dobimo kakšen vzorec pogodbe med podjetjem in univerzo o objavi podatkov. So a template of a contract between the company and the university about data management. Yes, Dr. Kotar tells me that yes, we can get you one. So maybe if you write us to doktorske študij, like send us an email and we can provide this template. Or should Dr. Kotar, who should they address?
It depends what you want to do. We doktorska šola, the doctor studies, the doctor school can send a template basically to all contact points at faculties and academies, and it can then these offices at faculties academies, they just provide this whenever a certain PhD student needs it, or it can be published maybe at the pages of the doctoral school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so please contact the doctoral school, pišite na doktorsko šolo, doktorski študij @unilea.si, and we can provide such a template. Bomo uredili. Kako je z intervjuji? Ali se objavljajo transkripti ali kodiranje? Mnogi udeleženci bodo še teže pristali na sodelovanje, saj si ne želijo, da bi imeli vsi dostop do tega. Okay, so one of our students is concerned about the interviews, whether they're coded or whether the transcripts are not coded, and because some of the participants will, find it hard to, to agree on such an interview if they know that everyone will have access to what they say right? If this is not coded. Maybe Dr. Bezia, can you say something?
Ja, bom kar najprej odgovorila v slovenščini. Torej, v arhivu družboslovnih podatkov se ukvarjamo tudi z objavo intervjujev in da objavljamo transkripte intervjujev in tudi kode, kadar so te pač neka dodana vrednost in raziskovalec oceni, da je smiselno objaviti tudi kodo. Glede drugega dela vprašanja, to je pogosto skrb raziskovalcev, da bodo udeleženci težje pristali na sodelovanje, vendar praksa kaže, da je prav nasprotno, da ko udeležence ustrezno informiramo, zakaj zbiramo podatke in kaj točno bomo z njimi počeli in kaj je torej namen tega raziskovanja, brez težav običajno pristanejo na sodelovanje. In tudi, ko jim povedo raziskovalci, da bodo njihovi intervjuji shranjeni v arhivu, nimajo s tem večinoma težav. Imajo pa priložnost odločiti se. Yes, so should I briefly?
I can just wrap it up in short. So communication with your informant is vital. So if you tell them in advance, the experience says that they usually agree on the interview if they are informed in advance about who will have access to this data and so on. Okay.
Excuse me, Professor Marvin, if I may. My personal experience is that I was interviewed on Open Science something. So the persons were from abroad, and at the end or after some time, I was asked if I want that the interview is anonymized. This would mean that it will be publicly available, either with my true personal data or anonymized.
Okay, yeah, so obviously it is an issue, but your experience at the archives is kind of positive more than negative.
It's very positive. So what we actually notice is that usually researchers are fearful about these questions, but not respondents. So we have a case, for example, that a researcher was conducting interviews with Roma women activists, and the researcher asked all women if they are willing to be cited in the interview, so if their names can appear in the interviews or they should be anonymized. And every interviewee said, please keep my name inside. I want that everyone knows what we are doing in our communities. So they were like proud to deliver interviews and for the history, so to say.
This is very interesting. Yeah, this is a very interesting information. Okay, so I don't see any other questions in the chat, so please let me know if I'm mistaken. And I think our time is up. So I would like to thank the speakers and also the participants for coming here, for their time, for the active participation. We received a lot of questions, and we thank you. And also this will help us kind of design the future events about research data management. Aha, another question. Lahko morda dobimo posnetek predavanj. Jutri bo na voljo, torej obljubljeno nam je, da v petek bo na voljo in ga boste našli na naših spletnih straneh, ali greste preko odprte znanosti ali pa preko doktorske šole. Tako da bo, ne, ponavadi traja kakšen dan, dva, ne več. Ne. So thank you everyone. And I hope you will join us at our future webinars, and especially at our annual meeting where we will actually be able to communicate in person. So we plan to have it, like at FDV in a room, like in person, as I said. Okay, so and yeah, also can we please get the presentations from today's lecture? Yes, the transparencies will be posted together at the same location as the webinar, the recording of the webinar. So yeah, just go to our pages. Okay, so thanks everyone, and so now we conclude.